Yo, what up, guys? It's Mr. E. I thought to myself, you know what? New season's coming up soon. You guys might want to know a little bit more about what's to come. So I went ahead and went out of my way to find someone who knows a little bit more about what's coming. So check out this one-on-one I did with one of the future Hero Siege developers. Today we have a special guest on the channel, guys. We have Devlin here from the Hero Siege community. He's got a lot to talk about, what he plans to work on with the dev team, maybe possibly joining the dev team at some point. But yeah, how's it going, Dev? How are you doing today?
Hey, Equinox, I'm doing pretty good. Glad to be here today.
Awesome. Um, I hope I'm not taking you away from your busy schedule.
Oh no, I've actually managed to set enough time aside just to do one interview, but as soon as we're done here, I'm probably not gonna get any sleep until launch. I wanted to play launch. I don't know if I can play right at launch. I might be a few hours late due to sleep, but we'll see how it is.
Yeah, yep, it's part of the role. So yeah, it's good to have you. I got a lot of questions to ask, and I guess we'll see what you can answer.
Yeah, I mean, I'll answer them to the best of my knowledge and ability to do so without revealing information that I shouldn't be, but pretty much ask away.
All right, so let's start with how do you feel about season 12? Do you feel like it went smoothly? Do you feel like it ended well? What do you think as far as the season goes in general? Do you feel that there's some big changes needing to be done for the next season?
So, the way season 12 went, I mean, as everybody knows who plays the game, it was not the greatest. Right before season start, the server dev who worked on the servers, obviously, he had quit a week prior to server launch because he had found a full-time job and his job was only part-time.
Jeez.
Um, so it was pretty rough because the way a lot of people don't see server issues is I the way I explain it is IT is like being a doctor. So let's say Elias works on coding and Tom works on servers. Tom is a brain surgeon and Elias is a heart doctor. You're not going to go to a heart doctor to see anything about your brain. So that
Okay.
was a huge thing where everybody was up in arms about, hey, all these issues are happening. But honestly, I'm surprised the servers were even online during that time
So
because
you
Elias was
feel you
pretty much.
feel like they probably should have held
I
off on the launch?
I don't think that was the case. It was about how well it could have gone with the knowledge of the team at the given time. But midway through the season, it got way better after Tom joined, and Tommy like did really good. And I think season 13 will be massively better than season 12 in terms of how it starts. Season 12 ended, I believe, really strong. The community did die off a lot because of the server issues, but I don't think we'll see it that big of a dip in season 13 as we did season 12. Which is ironically, season 12 was also the highest grossing season for Hero Siege so far to date.
So with beta, I had never actually got around to trying it. How has that run into, like, for example, if you were to compare beta running into the next season, has beta been pretty smooth?
So our beta has been scaled back. Like we turned off scaling on weapon scaling and damage scaling on abilities. So we wanted bare bones, pretty much like base damage stats from people and ask how they felt. So a lot of people will say that currently the beta feels sluggish, slow, low DPS. I mean, we are doing a stat crunch on all, I guess, pretty much all classes and like all abilities because we're trying to lower the DPS. Because if you look at like let's say Diablo, it comes to the whole thing of every season they have to add another zero. There's no way to stat crunch in D3 anymore because it's just gotten out of hand. Let's compare like season 1 and 2, you were doing what? A couple million damage, maybe 10 to 20 million damage. Now you're doing
Trillions.
200 billion to like couple of trillions of damage, or
Right.
maybe a couple 100 trillion damage. And it's a slow slippery slope that once you get into that, it's hard to get out of. So the goal for season 13 was to stat crunch everything and to try to get it balanced to the point to where it's easy to add and remove damage from any classes at any time without having to keep adding to classes to make them feel relevant.
Okay. I can see that. So that you want to go back to the basics, and but at the same time, you don't want to nerf things so much that people feel like the game is brand new, like not recognizable anymore. Correct?
Correct. Yes. So that's a huge part of it. Is like I don't, as a player coming from the community into helping with the development process, I don't want to see the fun aspects of the game, because I know a lot of people personally love running through content fast, dealing good damage, and being able to kill stuff pretty quickly. That's cool. I mean, you can do that, but the numbers have to come down, right? Regardless of whether you're doing 2 billion DPS or 2,000 DPS, if you clear the same, it's still going to feel good.
I agree. So like if a boss has billions of HP and you're only doing millions of HP, and then you take that and you would lower the damage, so you're doing like a half of that damage, but then the boss in general would have his HP halved as well, so it's like hard to tell. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Like, I'll give an example. Sung Lee, right? He had what, somewhere, depending on
It
the
was,
role of the instance, he would have 1.7 billion to 0.2 billion HP on Inferno 1.
yeah,
Um,
it was somewhere around like 2.3 billion, I think.
yeah, it's funny because bosses actually have a roll on their HP. I don't know if you knew that, but bosses can roll, have like a wide range, and I
But
found out Sung Lee's was
wasn't that based on their type? So if you got an elemental, it would be higher.
correct.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah.
It was based off of that originally, but I believe that got changed back in season 10. So
Oh.
now they left the bosses with the rolls, but they always change HP now, regardless of whether they have an element. It's really weird. Um,
And is
but so let's
that affects all bosses too?
correct.
Okay.
And so let's. Well, I guess the act bosses it still will also represent on. So example that I was making with Sung, his HP last time that I had checked, I still need to do my last Uber checks, but it was down to like 600 million. So he got a significant decrease in HP. So we are making up for the stat crunch, but I am also making Uber bosses a little bit harder because currently they're way too easy and gear is way too accessible.
I don't know what exactly that intakes, but I could say that if you sped up their attack in general, where they have less delay between attacking, that would probably fix that issue, I feel like. So, for example, when the fight starts, you know how at the beginning of the season, Monkey Boss was like literally putting a beam on you and you had to move or you die? Like, kind of like that type of mentality towards being faster, I suppose, even though that was kind of insane with the example, but is
Yeah,
that
we
kind of
wanted
like the
to
idea maybe is just
we
speeding
wanted to
up?
move away from making mechanics harder, because I feel like a lot of the mechanics on boss fights are really good. They're really good, right? Some of them don't deal enough damage, so we've upped the damage on some. But another thing that we also did was making the boss fights a little bit longer. I mean, not too much longer. I'm talking like 20, 30 seconds extra, which that's doesn't sound like a huge thing, but that's 20 or 30 seconds that you have to play better on, right?
Well,
So,
it sounds like a big thing to somebody who could kill the boss in like instantly or in a couple seconds, you know? So 30 seconds is
correct.
like almost 30 times longer.
Yeah, that's correct. So it's one of those things where it's like you actually have to do the boss as opposed to just walking up to it and it's instantly evaporated. Because that's not an Uber boss. That's just a loot pinata.
There is also the opportunity to make it so that uh, Uber bosses can't be stunned. That would be kind of make it harder in general.
It's ironic that you say that. We've actually changed the AI of bosses to where you can, because I know a big exploit was the whole taunt exploit with mercenaries or just taunt in general if you had like a judge. So their AI has been reworked where that will not happen, and you can no longer bug them that way.
Okay. So let's move on to the next question. What differences can we see moving on to season 13 comparably to season 12?
So season 13, as I said, is a huge stat crunch. So what we did was we've completely removed Inferno and we've upped the difficulty of Hell.
Oh,
We've also decided to change the leveling process, and endgame will start at level 80.
okay. But that doesn't mean that you can't hit 100 still, right?
Correct. Hitting 100 now will take if you're like think of like a hardcore veteran player, it'll probably take you roughly about 2 to 3 days. As a casual player, I expect players to hit it in between 5.
Okay. So, no Inferno. Um, what was the idea behind taking Inferno away? I know a lot of players were talking about you should even add another difficulty past Inferno. You know what I mean?
Oh, it's funny that you say that. There used to be 3 more difficulties past Inferno. One was Destruction, the other one was Toxic, and I forget what the other one was, but there was 3 that was past Inferno.
I thought I
So we
thought Hell mode used to be the last mode. Am I
no
wrong?
Toxicity was the last mode.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that was the hardest difficulty. Um, so the idea behind this is, as a lot of people know, this game takes a lot of, I guess, stuff from like D2 and 1 as sort of like a homage to it. So we wanted to bring it down to D2's level, equalize it out, and this will also segue easier issues down the line when we're trying to implement more content. Because if we're adding more content to the game, do you really want to go through 4 difficulties, right? So let's say later down the line we decide to add, Act 8, Act 9, Act 10, or extra endgame content. Just adding all that content on top of all the difficulties that there are, it becomes hard to. And it just makes the game longer for players
True.
just to get the endgame.
Yeah. So maybe the idea would be to just make the difficulty meter that you slide on like so much harder that if you really wanted to push yourself, you could just slide the bar.
Correct. Yeah, we're looking into changing how that bar works. Currently, it's not to where I want it to be for this upcoming season. It'll be a challenge, but I think it won't as hard as Inferno 5 was in season 12.
Huh, interesting. All right.
But
Well, I mean that's cool. Very interesting not seeing Inferno though. I started in season 7 and um yeah, it's going to be a huge change kind of like from those going from 6 to 7 almost.
oh
Um
yeah, it's going to be a very very huge change. This is the biggest change that Hero Siege has done since season 7, the season 6 to 7 transition.
all right. So as far as this past couple seasons there's been a lot of RMT and duplications and random stuff that it's affected the whole server. What measures have been put in place for season 13 that you actually know about that will actually make and benefit everybody that plays?
So we do have things in place for it. I can't really talk about it, but what I can say is that we have a team of highly trained monkeys to make sure that this is not going to happen, or it shouldn't happen. Because we all do know and no matter what online game you play, as long as there's currency in it, there's always going to be a gold seller, regardless of whether you like it or not. We do not like it. We ban on site. But the thing is there's always going to be that small thing that slips through the cracks. Obviously, we're working on cracking down on that, but just know if you do see it, report it. It gets taken care of.
And how should players report it?
The best way for players to report it is if you see somebody into it, pick up their small little ID code next to their name, ping it to one of the developers on Discord, or post it into a channel and tag one of the staff members. Or you can even put a ticket in on the Discord.
I would probably go as far as to try to keep it more secretive, especially if it's something that could leak information to possibly being able to exploit something. So I wouldn't post it so everybody could probably see it if it's something you feel could be duplicated. Um,
If it's in terms of RMT, it's fine. But if it's duplication, please message a Discord staff or a pass staff.
so that
We do not want
that's good
another
to
season
hear.
to go.
I'm really hoping that going into season 13 we don't see a lot of stuff like that, especially with how bad Auction House can get. And speaking
Yeah,
of Auction House, what changes, if any, are going to be in season 13 for Auction House? I'm assuming the idea is not to have it down for a long period of time like it has been in season 12, and hopefully all of the problems with items disappearing and people's like rubies just like not showing up on their account and whatnot is fixed. But as far as maybe how many items we can put in or store, or how long the grace period is for items to go expired, like has any of that changed?
currently in testing, nothing really has changed on the auction house. We're in the process of changing stuff, but right now we don't want to implement something that just won't work. So we'd rather have it work in its current state than to push out a patch that'll just break everything.
Okay.
Because as even as a personally as a player coming from the game, I'd rather have those 10 slots and be able to use the auction house than to have an auction house that's eating my items and doing a bunch of random stuff that I can't control.
Um, I know 200 slots seems like it could be a fair amount of like space, but I know a lot of end game players tend to run out pretty quickly because they're hoarders and they don't want to sell their stuff right away, or they don't know if they're going to make multiple builds or what they're going to do. So they end up making extra characters just to store all their gear on. Is there any chance that there's talk about maybe making a second expansion pack or anything for players to be able to hold more gear?
Not this season, sadly. But I have been in talks about adding something along those lines to add more expansion to your stash. Not technically your player inventory, but a expanded stash. I want to make I guess a paid DLC that expands it to 1,000 and see how that does. But I believe I can get that done by season 14. Don't quote me on that, but I will try my damnedest to get it that far.
I do have a suggestion, but I don't think it's something I should talk about as far as on here because it might be too much leaked information on future content. But I do have a suggestion that I can bring up outside of the video. And I guess we'll see how that pans out towards season 14. But that's good to know
Yeah.
that there is talk about it, though. Like, making extra characters isn't bad, but at the same time, it's kind of going way out of the way just to be able to store your
Oh yeah,
stuff. So
and then you have to get on that character. You have to pull the item out and either get in a game with somebody else or pull something out of your stash and put it in your stash. Yeah, it's just a big old hassle that personally I hate doing, and I know a lot of other people hate doing. So it's on my radar.
So, new topic, class balancing. You said that you and Wooksy are in the works on going in and nerfing a couple things or buffing a couple things, but is there anything that we should know as far as uh, advanced class work? Like, is there any classes that from this past season seem to not have been very playable compared to others, or others that were way too meta that are being very much reworked? Like, can you explain any of that?
So my design philosophy is don't nerf what's fun, right? So a lot of players really enjoyed the whole auto attack marksman, right? So it did get nerfed. Don't get me wrong.
I'm
There's
using
still
it right
ways.
now, so
There's still ways to do it. I added, well, I guess me and Luxie added over 133 new items for people to play around. So
132.
it's 132. All right, so 132. So there's ways to do it again, but it has been nerfed. But my design philosophy is not nerfing it without adding more options. So let's say Demon Spawn, right? That was the lowest played class of season 12.
I can agree to
We
that.
are we are bringing that in line, changing sets, changing abilities, and bringing it in line with other classes. The goal is not to have one meta class. Obviously, depending on like streamers and what people find first out of the new items, usually will tend to get popular, right? But as somebody who's played Redneck since season 6, which when Redneck was considered one of the worst classes, and now it's actually a pretty decent class, but everything hopefully should be in line with each other. That is the goal on everything. I don't personally want you to log in and have to say, well, I wanted to play this class, but this is the meta class and it's best right now. So I'm obviously going to play this because it's way more efficient. I want people to pick a class to play because it is efficient, but it's also in line within 10% of each other class.
Right. Cool. Well, I'm happy to hear that. I'm sure there's still going to be the metas though. Like eventually someone will be find something that is a little bit more unbalanced, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, and
Especially
that's
with
what I
all of
bring.
the new items you said that are coming out. There's so
Yeah,
many possibilities for testing and finding loopholes and stuff that you guys probably didn't even realize was there until somebody actually discovers it.
yeah, and that was my whole thing of where with this many items being added, changes happening, that there will be a meta build. There, no matter if you have two classes same and the same damage on something, someone will find something that's meta, and that'll become meta, regardless of whether, let's say, it's Demon Slayer melee. What a lot of people didn't know last season is that Demon Slayer ranged was actually about 15% better than melee. But do you know what was meta? Melee, because melee was the first one to get geared first and people saw it and liked it.
That and it carried over from other seasons.
Correct. So people were used to it. So it's one of those things, right? So meta doesn't technically always mean best. It just means it's, flavor of the month. It's what people want to do. It's what people saw, and it's good.
So let's go back to the idea you said about 132 new items coming. What in particular can you tell us about those items? Is there anything specific that you think players should shoot to try to get? Like, what can you tell us in general? Maybe even like a hint towards where should they start looking as far as certain drops or whatnot?
So in designing all of these items for season 13, we've actually designed items like straight across the board. You'll start seeing new items as early as Nightmare. Um, I'll spoil something. Their Uabels has been changed into a set now for casters.
Ooh,
I'm not gonna go into what parts you need because in the game there's currently two Uabel items. so I'm not going to release what other items were added, but now it is a set with a set bonus, and that drops in night.
And
So
will
there's
that drop as a green then?
yes, it will be a green.
Okay. Um.
So you have stuff that's as early as that, or there's a new tier that got created called the chase tier.
Oh. Before we get too far into that, can you explain tiers a little bit? Because there's so many people asking me, like, hey, like, I don't see anything that talks about tiers, but I heard you mention tiers. Like, what exactly is a tier? Like, how do you determine what tier it is? Like, is that something that is going to be released in maybe the wiki or anything coming forward this season to explain tiers or anything?
So currently, I don't have any documentation written up on how to explain the tiers. Currently, tiers are based off of mostly level
That's how
and
I
drop
Yeah,
restriction
that's
areas.
that's kind of how I would describe it too. Like I told people like it's like a D tier to C tier if it was dropped at like a level requirement 68. Yeah, like you know what I mean? Like based on
Yeah,
item level itself is kind of how you would determine it, but with the factor that there's like uh S tier, SS tier, and then you're talking about there's a chase tier now. Those will be a lot harder to determine if they're that tier, unless there's factors involved. So that's where I was asking, I guess.
correct. Yeah, and the whole tiering list got changed. We've removed some tiers, added tiers inside of tiers. So there's like, let's say like your S tier, there's no more double S tier, but S tier has, let's see, 7 different tiers in S tier now.
Okay. I'm assuming you can't like explain further because you want people to find this out on their own.
Correct. Yeah. So a lot of the information I don't want to give about the new tiers. I will say there's still C, B, A, and S. We removed the D tier.
Okay, so um, yeah, okay. I don't know, like I said,
It's
how you
it's
would know what is what still, because if it, like even if it's
a
removed.
I plan on releasing a chart for upgrade tiers, and the upgrade tier list that has the upgrades on it will tell you what costs what is in what tiers. So it won't tell you what the satanics are, but it'll tell you what tiers and what levels for each of the tiers.
Okay, and
That way it's easier to differentiate which item is what.
is there such things as tiers as far as angelics go?
Angelic has their own tier. They are not affected by Magic Find, and they are listed under the category Angelic.
Okay, so there's no such thing as like a lower tiered angelic or anything. Um,
There's only one Angelic that will have a different drop rate that'll be a little bit higher than other Angelics. I won't spoil that though, and it's being actually added in season 13.
ooh, okay. Um, as far as angelics go, it's almost like a myth to most people. A lot of people haven't even seen them, uh, don't even know if they exist. As far as season 13 goes, what is the chances a player can actually find a satanic going into this next season?
So as far as Angelics, if you're a die-hard player, let's say you play 300 or 400 hours in a season, I believe you'll find one within 3 seasons. Maybe two, but I believe within probably about 700 to 1,000 hours worth of gameplay, you'll see one now.
And was this part of the, I guess, calculations moving into season 12, or is this only starting next season?
This is starting in season 13.
Okay. Well, that's nice to know then that if you don't find one maybe this season, then you have a way better chance finding one on the next season, probably.
Correct. Yeah. That my goal is Angelics are that tier where I'm under the whole thing of why have a tier of items if that tier is not obtainable. So you got to do what you got to do.
Right. Well, hopefully that this sets up a better uh, chance for players to expand upon what that they've actually tried and used. And a lot of players don't know that there is like the chance to use a local save editor. As far as that's going, when do you think that will be updated so players can actually start testing out new gear and stuff that's being added to
So
season 13?
a lot of people will hate me for this, but I had requested for Hamps to not update the local save editor until week 3 of the season. My reasoning behind that is with the amount of hours that the development team has put into this new season, I don't want it to be diminished within the first couple of weeks from people just trying to min max everything. I would like for people to have fun and experience the new content before going in and min maxing.
I could see that. As somebody who has been playing every season for the most part, part of the fun in it to me is the thrill of finding something maybe someone else doesn't know exists, and with the idea of being able to go into a program, literally just drop everything that's new in the game and test it all before it comes out. It kind of ruins the excitement and the thrill of actually discovery. And I think that the idea of delaying people from being able to do that is a plus in my book.
Correct, and that was my whole goal for that is like I want you to walk up to the auction house, see an item on it, and go, "Wait, what is that?" Or you see an ability on there, and you're like, "Wait, that looks cool." That sort of gets, I guess, diminished when you're able just to spawn it in local.
Right. Speaking of abilities, that was something I just thought of a second ago. Are we going to see any new abilities on, let's say, a boss that we've never seen before, um, going into the next season?
Currently, we haven't added new abilities. We have the potential of changing of them. I'm not completely sure which bosses were changed. Um, I do know Act 2 Death, his second phase for the skulls has been removed.
Oh my
We
god.
we found
That's
yeah,
definitely something that is amazing, but at the same time, like
it,
I don't
yeah,
know. I guess the whole boss fight before that has got to change a little bit because the hardest
he hits
part
a
was
little harder.
definitely the second phase for everybody.
His his original boss fight now hits a little bit harder. The reason that we took the second phase off was, as funny as it sounds, when you go to the Steam achievements and you see where people usually stop playing, it's in Act 2,
Okay.
which
So you're
usually
saying
tends
that people start giving up when they can't beat death.
correct. So originally, I don't know if you were playing at this time, but Death Skulls used to be a one shot, no
Yep.
matter what.
Yep. Season 7
So
was one shot.
so it was a one shot, and then I believe it was season 9 where they changed it to a not one shot. And then I guess they just decided, hey, this is a little too hard as an intro boss in Act 2. So it's been changed to just be removed. I think it's a good change for the game. I'm a little sad that it's going away because that was always the butt clenching moment whenever I was going through, let's say, Inferno for the first time per season, or I was going through Hell with maybe a little bit like under geared, and so I'll miss it, but it's a good change for the game.
Yeah, in general, it'll make a lot of people happier. I feel. Like you said, there's gonna be um, some feelings attached to something like that for those who have played for multiple seasons. But as far as changes, I mean, even the when the graphics changed on the bosses in general, and you went from like Girag being this like literal stone guy to being like a giant like stone knight or whatnot. Like any little changes like that was huge improvements overall. So I'm sure that something like this will improve the game going forward, anyways.
Yeah, and that was just the whole point of it is we don't want to be gatekeeping new players from getting into more content and then just giving up. Because honestly, when you first start playing this game, it is hard. It really is hard.
What's the chances you can remove the skulls from everything except for the hardest difficulty? That way you leave it the mechanic in the game, but it's only once you get to the hardest difficulty that it's actually in the game.
We talked about that, but the big thing is that's throwing a curveball to players. They're not like, let's say you're a new player and you get to the highest difficulty in hardcore, you get to that boss, and now it just did a new mechanic and you just died, right? So that's being thrown curveball to where it'd be cool. I'd love to do that. And I might experiment with it in the future, but as it is right now, I don't want to throw that in there. I
Um,
was thinking about maybe adding it to Uber Death.
I was thinking it probably wouldn't be too hard to add a little warning pop up, like for example, right before you walk up to start the fight with death, a little animation thing pops up on the screen that says like warning, this fight has been modified for the difficulty or something. That way the player would know like, oh well, I need to actually pay attention. But I don't know. It might actually get a little bit annoying if it pops up every time you go back. I don't know if it would be something you could go into settings and turn off
I
the little tutorial warning or
want
whatever.
to experiment with, you know how like a lot of games have quote unquote beginner tips that pop up. I want to experiment with that, and if I could get something like that to work, potentially I could do that later down the line. But something like this would be multiple seasons down the line, and season 14's plate is already going to be really huge.
Well, bringing up the idea of like a beginner's tutorial, I do have a question on that, and that is, have any new mechanics been added to help new players, such as tooltips and tutorials in game? Just in
So
general, has there been anything added for season
there,
13?
I'm sure you remember starting a new season and starting a new character, and sometimes you wouldn't get the Bonesaw quest, even though you would walk past the little plaque that gives you the quest and be like, crap, well, I got to make a new character so I can kill Bonesaw and get my potion. And then
Well,
even then, your potion would be like level 4 sometimes. So what we did was it's an auto accept quest as you walk by it, and then the potion you get from the quest is always level 1.
okay, that's good to know. I have had a lot of times where it was level 4, and obviously on a potion, level makes no difference whatsoever, so having a higher level version isn't better than having a level 1 version. um, unless that's something that's been added into the mechanics this season, where if you find a different version level potion, it's actually like better. I don't know if that's a thing, but um, obviously, I would think the lower the level on a potion, since they all probably do the same thing, would be
Correct. And
best.
the thing is, a lot of people don't know with the HP potions, regardless of let's say you get a mythic one at like level 8 that you craft off the vendor, or you pick up the level 1 in town. If it says health potion, it's going to heal you for the same amount. Localization is not there for the potions yet. It's a work in progress. So as I said, it's the same. It'll heal you for a percent of your life.
Yeah. Yep. That's exactly what I've noticed as well playing the game, and um, going forward. Now you guys know as well. Getting a mythical of one potion compared to a common of the same potion isn't better. It might just look better visually with your eyes, but it's not actually physically better in the game. You're not going to see a difference. Um, I guess going forward, maybe you guys could add like maybe a reduced cooldown of use on a higher tiered one, maybe. And it's this exact same thing. It's just
Yeah,
maybe
that's
uses less
honestly
time before using it again or something.
what I wanted to go for. Due to time restraints, there's a lot of stuff that's been not scrapped but put aside because we're running really thin. I mean, I guess 2 days is to launch, so we had to scrap a couple of minor stuff and potentially might be seen later in the season. Is some stuff that might be added later, but if it doesn't get added this season, it'll get added in season 14.
What's the
Season
chances?
14 we'll have way more time. We'll have way more development time for season 14 than we did 13. 13 was half of it was just server fixing, so 14 should be a smoother transition for the development team.
What's the chances of big changes, as in like set nerfs, weapon nerfs, nerfs in general, just midway through the season? Like, I know that's one thing that a lot of players hate as far as seasonal games go, is like, hey, I worked really hard to build this out, and then now something just happened and my class is absolute garbage. Now I have to rebuild
So
from scratch. Like, is that something that we still have to maybe worry about going into the next season? Is there
in
possible
season 12,
changes?
a lot of people saw the Demon Slayer nerf. Honestly, I'm not going to lie, that could have waited till the end of the season. But with that being said, moving forward, the goal is to not do something like that unless it's something that's a absolute just stupid that breaks the balance of the gameplay for other players. The Demon Slayer thing, that honestly could have went on, right? Could have honestly did that till the end of the season, wouldn't have affected anybody else's gameplay. So unless it's something like, let's say, for some reason, Shadow Occultist wraps, right? The one that gives you ability damage. Let's say there was a bug with it and it gave you 15,000% ability damage. And that was a bunch of builds coming out because of that. We're going to go ahead and nerf that because that's obviously broken. But the goal isn't to nerf mid-season. It never really is. Sometimes, I guess it goes through, some things go through the cracks and some hasty decisions are made. But moving forward, those decisions will hopefully not have to be made.
Yeah, I'd say as far as mid-season changes, as long as it's not something that would completely make a full build unplayable, like, I'm all for it. I'm fine with one piece that everybody's using that's like the most meta being changed. But I guess if it came down to like, well, this whole set of this character is too busted, we need to nerf the whole set, then that kind of will ruin somebody's season and maybe make them want to quit. So, but yeah,
Correct. And the big thing is that I tried to go for this season is replayability and fun. And having games have both of that without it being a constant annoying where they're at threat of changes. Like last season, like Demon Slayers, people who played Demon Slayer were like, okay, why do I want to keep playing Demon Slayer? Like, I'll use Voidborn as an example. Loved playing Demon Slayer, got nerfed. He got bored because he wasn't as tanky. A couple of his Slayers died, so he left the game for the season. So I want to prevent that from happening, which is why moving forward, we do not want to make those changes.
yeah, I feel you. I feel like that's a smart move. Um, how about Magic Find and Experience going into season 13? How has that been altered or adjusted?
So experience has been changed a lot. Um, we have removed experience from all items.
That means even boss tier items like Stickman
Yes,
Steve.
Stickman Steve has lost his EXP. Anubis lost their XP. So, like as I said, every item has been removed that has X. Well, the item itself has not been removed, but experience on the items have been removed.
How about
On it,
lower tier items that you find as you're gaining levels, such as legendaries and mythics?
those have minor. So I believe that the most XP you can get on an item now is 2%. It possibly is 3%. Last time I checked, there was only 2% though. So there's a little bit on there, but not enough to make you swap out one of your satanics to grind with XP on.
But you could still throw it on your merc.
Correct.
Okay, so
If you want your mercenary to be weaker, then yes. I'm
it's
not gonna say
that.
anything, but you're gonna want your mercs to be strong.
Yeah, that was another point I was going to bring up. Is this last season it seemed like mercs almost couldn't die, so I'm guessing that has been altered as well.
Correct. There's also a fun new little stat sheet. You go into the mercenary talents, you can actually see their stats now. Sort of like how you see your stat screen. They have the exact same stat screen for themselves.
How would that benefit a player though in general? Like, I guess a lot of people that are like myself, when you look at your stat sheet, you're not really factoring in like every stat because you're like, man, I don't even know if strength is actually benefiting me as much as physical, and I don't know if elemental is benefiting me as much as flat physical, and like, you know what I mean? Like, it's hard to read
Yeah,
the stats as is and what is actually more beneficial, especially when looking at gear and it says this one does more damage, but then you look at the one you have and you're like, how is that even possible? This one definitely looks like it's better. You know, like there's so many stats in the
there's
game
a
that
lot of localization issues in the game. I will not deny that. We are in the process of currently relocalizing what everything does. Um, so that's still a work in progress on what would be more beneficial than what, but it should be more clear for players now because currently scaling in on live servers in season 12, strength and energy really didn't do much for most characters. Like it didn't really scale many skills that much. But in season 13, we have changed the scaling, and it should be way easier to understand what items would be better for your character. Every item should show what, I guess not item, but talent should show what stat uses, because I know there were some skills last season that still didn't have the whole, oh, this skill scales off of energy, or this skill scales off of strength or stamina. But as I said, it's a work in progress, and we're currently adding more localization to skills and abilities. This season, we went through and, let's say, Midas Hand, right? It had the whole greed ability. What does greed do? Nobody knows.
oh, I knew
Now,
what
if
it
you,
did.
well, I'm, t- I'm
It just
I'm
made
mainly
it,
going for
it's
like,
basically the same thing as just every time you kill an enemy, it has a chance to
yeah.
drop gold. So
But as
basically,
a
it's
new
just a
player
bonus to gold
coming into
drop.
the game, you get that dropped. Go, okay, what is greed? Now you can scroll over greed, and it gives you a synopsis of what the ability does.
That's
And we
good.
have added
That's
that
awesome.
for roughly 95% of the abilities in game. There's a couple that sound like memes, which uh, will be issues where I copied and pasted them while I was half awake at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
But I'll let people find those because I didn't want to change them because it's just funny when you see it. But yeah, so localization is getting way better on the horizon. It's going to be way better in the future. Like I want to get to the point where people don't have to ask many questions when they see stuff, because I sit in the Hero Siege Discord a lot and take questions from people, and it'll be the same questions like, what does greed do? What does this ability do? What does hellfire do? Stuff like that. Now people will be able to have that in game.
Well, I'm sure that that's gonna make majority of the player base happy. Is that gonna be the same thing with rune words moving forward? If you highlight the skill on the rune word, it'll also tell you.
Yeah, yes, sir. I've went through and I've put all those descriptions on those, so we are all set for that. So
Um,
Rune will tell you what they do. Satanics will tell you what they do. If they're on Mythics, which there's a couple of abilities on Mythics now, I'm not going to spoil it, but they tell you what they do.
are those technically like a chase tier mythic then?
No, you can find them as early as like level 2.
Oh, what's the chances of it being handed to you by like an NPC through a quest?
Mythics, I do not believe come through quests. In normal, Mythics will only come from mystery chests.
Okay. So, as far as mystery chests go, has anything changed on, let's say, um, Mount Fuji, where you could go into the dungeon and get 2 chests every run, or is that the same?
That will be the same. Stuff like that is, I believe, really good for players because if you hit, let's say, a wall at that point right before you hit the Fish King, you can always go back a couple zones, go into Mount Fuji, farm you up a little bit of gear, and then progress. I feel like that is a healthy thing for the game where you farm stuff. Because think of like Diablo 2. In Diablo 2, there was in Act 1 there was what's known as the pits. And in the pits, you would go in, clear the zone, and there'd be a chest at the end. And you would farm that chest over and over and over for loot. So that's sort of like the same theory there, right? To where you can just do farm runs in one spot and keep going. It's just like doing Gurag runs in like Inferno. So, but instead it'd be in normal.
Right.
And you could just farm up a little bit of gear there and move on.
Has the since the you said there's increased in drop chance on like satanic gear, um, in general, um, does that also mean that there's an increased chance when popping open, let's say, a chest or breaking a blade of grass or a pot or something, more more chances at possibly satanics too?
Those rates have not been changed. Not so, at least not to my knowledge.
So you'd say that in general it went from, well, at lower difficulties, drops mainly came off of like champions only, or maybe the boss. But now it's kind of balanced out to where even mobs can start dropping stuff. So that's why it increased the whole drop chance, maybe.
Correct. I've also countered the drop chance. So it's like I've increased the drop chance, but I've also decreased the sell price. I want Satanics not to uncommon because you're in the second difficulty, right? Think of it like hell. You need those Satanics to progress, and people don't find it fun when you're grinding for 5 or 6 hours and you find 1 or 2 Satanics. Why not find 6, 7, 8, or 9? But they'll cost less, right? It's more potential for people to sell it on the auction house, and it's also more potential for, hey, I have this piece of gear, I could toss it to my friend and we could play together, as opposed to, oh, well, I'm super geared to the teeth, but my friend is still suffering. So my whole goal is to not make Satanics, I guess, as as rare, as weird as it sounds, even though Satanics would reign once you get to endgame. I guess it wouldn't reign unless you're like magic finding, but it's more of I want there to be a decent drop rate so it's not like you feel like you're stuck in mud.
Yeah, you don't want people to feel like end game players have to give them handouts just so they can move forward.
Correct. And I saw that a decent amount because people would say, "Oh, I'm frustrated. I've farmed for 4, 5, 6, or 7 hours, and I've only seen 2 Satanics. Both of them were weapons not for my class." That's a pretty bad feeling, right? You go in, you're grinding, you get these drops, but you can't even use them. So with the new drop rate system, it should solve that.
I think that that's awesome, but I did also come up with another question involving that. This past season, we saw a lot of Satanics dropping with ridiculous like rolls. So, for example, you'd find like, I guess, an item that didn't make any sense. So you'd find, let's say, um, a staff or something, and its main damage was wind. Like, is that type of thing still going to be in the next season, or is it has it been
That has been changed.
modified?
That has been changed. Have either added items to compensate for that, or we've just changed those items completely out. Um, Not only while creating those 130 some odd new Satanics, we make those, but we also had to go back and balance all of the old ones and change them. The Google Doc sheet that I actually have open right now is like 30 to 40 pages long of just item changes that we did throughout the last couple of months. So we've spent a lot of time fine tuning all of this so it's more fun.
With rune words since they first came out in the game have been definitely meta. Even people going as far as saying they're better than the angelics in the game for the most part. Um, Moving forward into season 13, like, has anything changed to make rune words less meta, less popular? It seemed like you
So
had to be using like half of your setup with rune words this past season if you wanted to even be close to pushing like the top leaderboards. um what advances or changes have been made for season 13 to towards rune words, I guess, in general?
so the big thing with rune words is I'll take Carnage for example. And I know you're using Carnage on your marksman most likely.
Yep, using it right now.
It currently takes a VOD and a Zod. And even though you played hardcore and it was a little harder to source those runes for it, it was still pretty easy to obtain, correct?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely the hardest part. Well, the hardest part is that I'm playing hardcore, so there's a lot less
So
players in the game to be able to buy things from. But
we have a stat. 72% of all marksmen in the game that's over hero level 50 last season had a Carnage. That stat was way too high. So we went through and we've re-runed all of the rune words and we've buffed rune words to compensate for what we did to them. But rune words are not, hey, I farmed for 2 days and I have it now. It's a, hey, this is a very end game item now.
and speaking of rune words in general, um, do we have any new ones to look forward to coming into the next season?
Coming into the next season, we wanted to try to stay away from rune words. The rune words that were planned were now made satanics. Because we want to do that. There's potentially some coming in season 14, but there is not any for season 13.
Okay, I had heard rumor that maybe there were more beginner style rune words made for those who really needed like a boost, like kind of like quick
There
steps. I
has
thought that
been
there was a couple
some
being made.
there has been some that have been changed to early levels.
Okay, so in general, there hasn't been new ones added, but there have been some older ones that instead of getting buffed were somewhat nerfed and made easier just so that players can advance earlier in the game.
Correct.
Okay, that's good to know. Um, as far as the Ruin Word spreadsheet goes, when do we think that's going to be updated for season 13? Who's actually working on it? I know Wooksy mostly does, but is he still the one who's putting it together for the next season?
Um, it most likely me, Wuxi, or maybe Amatsu doing that. I hope to have it out by the end of day one. I don't have a time frame for when it will be out, but I believe we should have it out day one.
And it's just going to be an updated version so people can use the same link that they have saved from before.
Correct. We are trying to move away from having to use the document. We're trying to have it to where it's on the Wikipedia. And that's been a work in progress the last couple of months, and the wiki team's been doing pretty well on that.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask that question. I was going to ask if the Rune Word Guide was going to be like added to the wiki, and then I was also going to ask, is there a build guide in progress for beginners that is going to be added to that wiki as well? I know that you, in general, before you actually got super in depth with this next season and trying to recreate and redesign and rebalance things, you were working on a guide build for Wooksy. Is that something that might be added to the wiki as well?
Um, we have honestly, we have no plans on putting that on the wiki. We're probably gonna make a post in the build section on the Discord and leave it as a sticky, and all the builds will probably be on YouTube channels. It's just easy. I personally think it's easier to see a video and be able to pan through a video and look at stuff than it is to read a guide.
Okay. I know that season 13, a lot of people used Wooxie's older guides and then found that they were way outdated after they put together their setup. But so that's why I was wondering, because it seemed like a big amount of the player base was looking for guide sheet, kind of like what Wooxie released in season 11.
Yeah, and doing something like that is a double-edged sword because as soon as you do something like that, it's sort of an expectation, not sort of like a hey, did something cool for the community type thing. Because honestly, Wuxi did that as something that was cool just to help out the community. Didn't have to go and do that, and he did it for 2 builds for each class, which was really cool. Some classes even had 3 builds, but then people expect right, and then people were angry when it wasn't done. So having that not as an expectation is better moving forward because then we're not disappointed.
I guess that makes sense. I would also add that if everybody's looking for a build guide, it tends to eventually become almost the meta if it's that good, and then nobody ends up going out of their way to make their own builds. They kind of are like, well, I know what I need. Now I just need to go farm all of it, you know?
Correct. And my advice to newer players that join the game is if you can't find any resources either on the Discord or on YouTube, another good place to look is on Twitch. A lot of people play, myself, FTP, you, um, Void, and we all usually play different classes. And there's usually people of different languages, like from Brazil, or we have Rand from, I think he's from Korea. So there's a lot of different people who are streaming, and they stream all different builds. So if you want to find something, you can find it as long as you're willing to search for it.
I completely agree. Um, there's been Russian streamers, there's been Swedish streamers, there's been Chinese streamers, there's streamers from all different countries and nations, and yeah, there's not as many sometimes as in other languages, and yeah, you'll probably see a majority players probably speaking Brazilian or English, but there's usually that one person that speaks in your language, and that
Correct. And
doesn't
even if
mean
there's
that they
not,
know what they're talking about. Though they might be new to the game and have no idea what anything is, but that doesn't mean you can't try to sit down, have a conversation with them, and maybe you guys can learn at the same time.
yeah, so there's always going to be some sort of resource for players um to learn either how to play the game or builds or mechanics and stuff like that. The issue is they just have to put in that little extra 5% effort to find out that information. Um, but hopefully, eventually, the week will be way better to the point where a lot of stuff will be just streamlined. You can pretty much pick and match what you want on your build because the wiki has so much information. So I give it a couple months down the line, we'll be at that point on the wiki where it's good, nice, and updated. But if new players need information, Twitch streams to Discord. Those are like the 3 biggest things I could advise people.
Yeah, I've been trying, like you can see with this video in general, I'm trying to do some updates, get some info out on YouTube as well. I might not be like I might be still like really new to the game, but I'm trying to put out as much detail and explanations of stuff for you guys as I can. So, moving forward, I guess you guys can check out my stuff. Hit the subscribe button if you want to see future content, and gonna continue to push stuff out throughout each season. Um, so let's move on to wormholes. What has changed, and what can we look forward to in next season as far as wormholes?
So my question to you real quick is what was the most hated wormhole layout that you disliked other than the swamp of Dagobah? Because we all know that we hated the swamp.
Yeah, the
Um,
idea of not being able to fly over water was a pain in the ass for sure.
so
Uh,
that map has been changed. I don't want to spoil it since I know you really hated that map. But what was your most hated map?
Honestly, you're probably not going to agree with me, but the one with the beach was my next least favorite. And the reason behind that was the arena for the actual boss was so small, I felt like I was going to constantly die because there's nowhere to run besides hiding behind like a rib
Oh,
cage thing. So that was literally my second least favorite.
so we made the map bigger. It's more open. Um, as in the beach is bigger. I believe the boss room is bigger when I was doing my testing of it. I can actually check that really quick as well. But we went through and we changed all of the wormholes that we believe were not just like not great to play, right?
A lot of people, and not me, this was actually one of my favorite ones, dislike the ice level because they're all afraid of getting froze and getting one shot when they're froze. I never really had that problem for some reason. I guess the characters I chose were so much more, I guess, advanced and able to push forward that things died before I got froze. Or if I froze, I literally used the mechanic of uh, the Mario pipe and just kind of teleported for a second so I didn't take an extra hit. So, I mean, I literally played as if my life depended on it instead of just running through trying to just kill everything and being like, oh crap, I got froze. And so, I mean, I played differently. I played with more skill maybe than some people, but it never really affected me in the man, I really don't want to do this level. I think I'm going to die. I should just like vote reset. So, has that map changed at all?
Yeah, so we went through and changed all maps with the exception of actually the ice map, which is funny that you say that.
Uh, rest in peace, guys. Uh,
It is the only map I believe out of the maps from last season that did not get changed because it's actually in a very good spot.
I thought that out of all of the maps, it was one of my favorites mainly because it was a thin lined map, so all the mobs are literally in a straight line. I don't have to run left to right or run around the map to find them. On top of that, it was really quick to get to the boss. So it's literally just a small zigzag going down, and you're instantly at the boss. It was one of the quickest ones to possibly get through. I felt like that's why I liked it so much.
Yeah, and that was the whole concept. We wanted more maps that are sort of like that. So we also went through and added new maps this season. I don't want to spoil how many or what they are, but just know that there are new whole maps added to the pool.
How about bosses? Were any modified, changed, removed, added?
Um, there are changes. I don't want to list the changes because I want people to find that out. But just know they are going to have fun.
Should we
Because
be
there's
more afraid of going in there than before?
I wouldn't say afraid. There's just new mechanics that are in some of the boss fights now.
Have the mobs in general been modified to be stronger, easier, use more skills or anything?
Monsters have been changed in some of the tile sets that were previous. So there's monsters, and monsters are going to be a little bit harder than old pulls.
So
I don't want to go too much into depth with it, but wormholes will be really the whole. Hey, I'm going to push. This. I have this leaderboard spot because I'm good.
okay, so wormholes isn't going to be the same as season 12, where you're just grinding it all day for XP or for drops.
Correct. Wormholes are going to require keys again.
Okay, so if for those of you that weren't around for season 11 and beyond and before, um, we all used keys to be able to get in. It wasn't like season 12. Season 12 was kind of like the bonus is you don't have to use keys this season. So no keys were required for this season, season 12. But um, there you go. You have confirmation that keys are coming back for season 13. Um, has the same mechanic been re-added from the past, or is there a new way to get wormhole keys now?
Um, so pretty much it's gonna be the same as it was. I'm looking into more options of better ways of obtaining them, but if you're not really farming, you're not fishing for a proper wormhole once you get high up, won't have issues. But it's once you get into, I don't know, let's say wormhole 400, right? You're struggling, and you keep having to reset wormholes for a good layout, good mob type, good boss. You might start struggling with these then, but that comes with the whole grinding of the game, right? You're gonna grind more. You're gonna get more money. You're gonna buy dust off the auction house, sell it for money, so you can get more keys, so you can get back into wormholes and keep pushing up the ladder. It's all about grind. I mean, it's all about getting up to the point and actually be on the top of the leaderboards. That's why there is a leaderboard. So you get to the top of it, and you get to the top of it, you actually have to be good. So it's gonna be a very long, tedious path of getting keys this season. But as I said, we're exploring new options.
Okay. Yeah, I thought that the idea of no keys was kind of a cool idea, but at the same time, I hated the fact that if like telling new players, oh, the best thing you can do once you're able to survive like Inferno mode is just
It's
sit
just
in
wormhole
wormhole
one
one all day.
over and over and
Yeah,
over. Or even I was guilty of that, and I ran with 3,400 MF, and I sat in wormhole one for what was it, something like a month straight, pretty much, just grinding out the same wormhole over and over and over. But I made fists full of rubies, but it's not a good gameplay loop.
yeah,
Now
I can
now
agree.
people will be able to farm the world and try out the new drop system. So it's going to be very interesting for players coming into this season.
Um, there was something you had mentioned prior to this conversation about how possibly the mobs and wormholes aren't like just stationed in one map anymore. There might be a chance that you'll find all different types of mobs in all different maps now. Is that a thing?
Sadly, this season we didn't have time to randomize it. I really want to randomize it because that means less rift fishing, right? Because once you get up really high up, let's say you're current season 12, you're at wormhole 900. Do you really want to do an ice map at that point? You really don't, because you start getting frozen at that point and it starts becoming sketchy. But if you had random monsters, you would have to either take it or lose out on. So that I want to get to that eventually. I don't know if we can do it. I hope that we can do it, but so far it's no.
All right. Well, that's good to know. There's still going to be those maps that players are going to prefer over the other ones. So look forward to that, I suppose, coming next season still is you are not going to have to worry about, oh man, like I got the pyramid one or the one that's kind of like, in a pyramid shape. Um and then you're like, man, but like every other mob is like a frost guy. So anything's possible coming in the future, but for now, wormholes and mobs have seem to
A
be
static drop
staying,
type.
yeah, staying around the same. Um, I know this has been talked about multiple times and it has been shared in the community, but there's probably still a lot of people that don't know. They're looking forward to next season mainly because they think there's going to be a new class reveal, and you know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Jotun.
Oh,
So
yeah.
what's the deal with that going into season
So
13?
as sad it is to say, if we weren't doing all like these huge massive changes and like the rebalancing of difficulty, all these new satanics, it would have been ready. The only issue is he's mostly ready for the most part. It's just the issue of we don't want to release an unfinished class because nothing feels worse than you having a shiny brand new car, but you're missing the engine. So the whole philosophy was make sure it's properly tested. He'll be out for season 14.
All right. Well, let's hope it's true. It's been a couple seasons where things have been said next season, next season, next season. So I guess we'll see. But I'm assuming that with Devlin here being part of the team working forward, I'm assuming he's going to make sure stuff gets done.
I mean,
He's like, I mean,
I just do what I'm told and I try to help out. That's pretty much it. I just want to make sure that the game as fun as it possibly can. Community.
so I heard from somebody that I'm not going to mention that there is possibly some hidden objectives coming into season 13 that is not going to be really widely talked about. And the idea is for the player base to explore, adventure, and try to discover these on their own. Is this something that's true? And if so, uh, how would we know if it's like a glitch in the system or if it's actually in-game content?
So, as a lot of people know, with let's say like the Pope hat, right? A lot of people don't know that that exists, right? The Pope hat. Um, there is more stuff like the Pope hat being added to season 13. Um, I don't want to say anything about it. It's one of those. There are a bunch of like little Easter eggs that people need to go and find. But there's some stuff that people really, 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 really like. There's one item that I actually like personally that I will be going for on day one. But just know if you guys do find holes in walls and stuff like that, most of the time it's meant to be like that in a lot of cases.
Okay. Um, I have also heard that there's possibly some changes to relics this season as well.
There is a lot of changes. We have added stuff and we've also changed a bunch of stuff. I'll give an example. Like, what in season 12, what was the worst flight relic?
Um, you
When you
know,
come down to it, it was amputation kit.
yeah, I would say amputation kit was probably the least chosen.
So
Obviously, some people just picked it for the
flight, right?
cosmetic. They liked the fact that you looked like you were floating. But
So this upcoming season, let's say amputation kit, I went ahead and added 5 AP, like 5% APS on it. So it's actually a viable relic to use. Not only that, there's also relics that we've added to the game. Um, the worst class to be when it comes to relics was energy. We have bridged that gap and we have fixed that. There's also other relics for different stats. There's a couple of active relics. There's a lot being added. I believe it's something close to like 5 or 30 relics.
has anything changed with Mario Pipe this season moving into season 13? I know it used to be a shorter cooldown, then the cooldown was made longer, then the cooldown was reduced again, and then like is it getting changed once again or is it being
Mario Pipe is currently being going to be the same as it is in season 12. But on the subject of teleports, for players to be a little excited, we have removed the cooldown from the teleport ability. So like Shattered Dimensions, Enigma, stuff like that, we have removed cooldown, so you're able to spam the teleport. Granted, you have the mana for mana cost.
that's pretty big. Um, I'm I'm excited to see who comes up with some awesome builds using teleport as actually a speed farm mechanic. I'm sure it'll be a thing. And is the teleport still the same distance? Like it's like
Yes,
two
it's
two
still
blocks or something?
It's still the same distance because we didn't want people to teleport over those 4-block gap walls that we put up for like boss rooms and stuff now.
Right.
But it is spammable, and in some cases, in some classes, it's faster than actually walking or running.
Has boss rune drops changed at all this next season?
I don't want to spoil anything for anybody, but there are changes, but I do not want to say whether they are good or bad.
Okay. And as far as runes go in general, have there been any new or old runes added or removed?
There has been changes, but the changes that are made are for a good change for the longevity of the game.
So hopefully with the change that's made this season, it'll stay like that moving forward. It won't be constantly changed every season.
Um, I can't guarantee that. I can only say that I hope so for the sake of everything. Eventually down the line, I want to change out some of the work because some of these runes are just completely useless and you never use them. So
Yeah.
hopefully in the future there will be a rework.
All right. Well, I mean that's awesome. Uh, it was really awesome to be able to sit here and have a one-on-one conversation with you, and I feel like moving forward, we're gonna see even better game out of the work that you've been putting in and actually helping the dev team with. Like I said, you haven't actually officially became like a dev yet, but you're working your way towards actually possibly being one. And I think that even if you aren't one, the amount of work that you've been putting in and like doing with the dev team is very notable, and people will see the difference for sure. So thank you very much for having a one-on-one conversation with me, helping out the player base, and just being friendly and open. There's
Yeah,
those
I
that
had a lot of fun, and hopefully in the future we could do more of these sit downs. And I
that
try to be as open as possible without revealing details that I reveal. But
do you feel comfortable with those having questions moving forward to contact you on Discord, or do you feel like they should still contact the main members of the dev team, such as like
um,
Woodsy or um,
moving forward, if people have questions, they're more than welcome to contact me on Discord. I don't always respond to my DMs because of how many I get per day. I get somewhere in the lines of like 50 to 100 different people DMing me a day at this point. But I try to get to as many as I can. I'm currently backlogged with 247 DMs from different people, so it's a slow grunge.
All right. Well, you heard it from him. He's already super busy with what's moving forward into the game, but he's also willing to take questions or concerns if you want to shoot him a message. So, thank you very much, Dev. Congratulations on getting so much done in the game. I know you work full time with another job as well and have a family, so you're doing this right now just for free and to try to help the player base, and that's awesome. So thank you very much for that, and I guess we'll talk again soon.
Yes, sir. I will see everybody for launch on Monday on the 12th. You guys have a good weekend.
All right, man. Take care. You have a good weekend as well. Well, there you go, guys. I hope this video helps you going into Season 13. And if you guys want to catch further content, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Thank you, guys, and I'll catch you on the next video.